and welcome to Round Robin. I'm your host, Robin McCormick, with the City of Hampton's Communications and Marketing Department. And today we're going to talk, it's a third installment. This topic is so popular, bullying, and particularly for kids in the high school years, where it gets a little harder to know what's going on and a little harder for the parent to be involved. My guest is Alvian Lyons, who's our family and parenting expert. Welcome back.
Good morning, thanks.
We really warm up to this topic. It is one of the big fears. I mean, you know, medical health and physical health are huge.
Hot button.
Yeah.
Definitely. And the high school thing is very, very interesting because high school is the point where bullying tends to get the worst. And it's also likely to get the most violent as well because you're now dealing with people who are not mentally as mature as an adult, but physically as strong as one. Right. And that combination can be a very interesting combination, to say the least, and very scary for parents.
Yeah.
And particularly when we talk about it when it comes to the boys. Physical bullying at that level can be really dangerous. So it is very important that we're incredibly plugged in where our kids are concerned. And you and I have talked about this before, what happens with parents in that transition is they feel like I need to be most involved at the elementary level, and they start to wean their involvement by the time the kids get to high school. But when it comes to these issues, it actually works the opposite. You have to be even more involved as your kids get older because the consequences are so much greater. And whether your child is the one doing the bullying or the child is being bullied, on either end, they are far more dangerous for our kids.
Well, and I think at that age too, you don't always know the child's friend. It doesn't even sound right to say child. You don't know the kid's friends as well.
Right.
Once they can drive or their friends can drive, it's not like when you have to arrange play dates and you drop them off and you meet the parents and you know everybody.
Right.
The landscape really changes.
And some of it changes in ways that we don't have to let it change. Because we have a tendency as parents to feel like I've got to back off. And
I always do, yeah.
Yeah, and yes, we do back off in the sense that we want our kids to learn how to be independent, but we don't have to back off of our parenting. We never stop being parents. It's just how we go about parenting that may look a little different. It's perfectly okay to still make the phone call. I still make the phone call. My girls are leaving for college in August, and I still make the phone call. Are there going to be parents involved? You want to go over to a party? I need to know who's home. Because if it goes wrong, do understand that you're still dealing with minors. So we are still completely on the hook as adults. So to give our children adult freedom and there not be adults involved in the process to oversee that they're safe, and then recognize that if something goes wrong, we are 100% on the hook for that. I think it would be better off if we just go ahead and do the overbearing parent.
You know, it's manipulative, but it's also, I try to encourage them to be at my house as much as possible.
That's very smart. It's not manipulative, it's smart.
And I don't listen into everything, but I check in enough to know what's going on and to know those kids.
I agree, because suddenly I'm thirsty and I need a glass of water downstairs where you are, because that's what we need to do as parents. Yeah. We need to make sure that we have our ear to the ground always. There is no time that you stop caring about what's going on with your kid, and there's no time that you stop participating in their health and safety, mentally, emotionally, and physically. And we need to know that it's okay. We seem to believe that we have to back off and we have to unplug, but that is really a social construct that we don't have to respond to. We're not obligated to live the way we think that socially we're supposed to. We are only obligated to love, be there, provide for, care for, take care of our kids, and the list goes on, but our obligation is to our children. We are not obligated to follow anybody else's social construct. So if that means that you are that parent that's going to ask the 50 questions, be that parent, whether or not your kids are in high school. Because if something goes wrong, they're going to call you. And you do not want the men in blue to be the ones who are calling you. So we need to know what's going on. Having conversations with your kids at every single level is equally as important. But when our kids are starting to make their own decisions, it becomes even more important that they have bought in to our value system. How you treat others and how you let others treat you is essential to our kids' success, particularly emotionally and physically.
So, what do you do? How do you know, and how do you react? Let's talk about boys first, and about the physical dangers of bullying.
Well, I actually happen to be a proponent of making sure that your kids know how to defend themselves. Not start fights, but defend themselves. Getting your kids involved in things that teach them safety is important. And there's no point that it's too late for your kids to learn some of those things. I mean, the city used to, at least for sure. I'm not sure if they do right now. I have not checked, so let me give the disclaimer, but does offer some programs in self-defense, which can be very useful. I know that they offered them for girls, but I don't know whether or not they offer them still for boys, particularly through the police department originally. But there are so many different programs in our communities, whether you're talking about martial arts or you're talking about taekwondo, it doesn't matter. The fact is that your kids should know how to defend themselves and understand. What I like about the philosophies is that you're never starting the fights. Right. You're just making sure that you can keep yourself physically safe. And that's important for our boys and our girls.
Yes, it is, whether it's bullying or other social threats.
Absolutely. Because when we send them off to college, not too long after these little high school years, we need to know that they're going to be safe. Absolutely. Be safe without us present. So I'm a huge proponent in self-defense. You should know how to defend yourself to the best of your ability and at every age. So that's important. The other thing is making sure that you are communicating still with the school. One of the problems that happens at the school level, and I've worked at every level K through 12, is our parents disengage. So we don't even know who to call if we're seeing something at the academic level. If we're inside the school watching things happen, we don't even know where to reach some parents sometimes. Make sure that the school has a viable mechanism of communicating with you, that they can find you if something's going on where your kids are concerned. And simultaneously, make sure you've made the effort to partner with your school. Let them know that you're the parent who wants to know, that it's okay to call me. Yes, I may be in the office, I may not be able to respond right away, but as soon as I get a chance, I'm going to respond. Communicate with your kids' guidance counselors. Make sure that you know even the janitors are helpful. Have conversations with the people in the building because you're developing assets. You are creating limbs to that tree that's connected to your kid. You want to be able to reach out and have means to be able to reach out. But it means that we have to make different kinds of efforts by the time our kids are in high school because the expectation is that we're not going to be very involved in the process. We have to show that we're different kinds of parents. Our kids are worth that. I know. It does take a big sigh, doesn't it?
It does. You know, and there is, I mean, when they get to high school, it is kind of natural to disengage a little bit. Like I used to volunteer in elementary school. I was a writing coach even at some point. But in high school, you know, they have 8 teachers. They have 8 classes. It's hard to, I mean, I always go to the back to school night. You meet everybody. You give them your email and your phone number. You at least make that connection.
And then you never hear from each other again.
Well, you know, but you know, if there's a problem, you will. I mean, I have a pretty high level of confidence there.
Sometimes. And I say that not to say that we don't have great teachers or to say that we have great parents.
Sure.
But with the point that you bring up about the fact that you have 8 teachers, those 8 teachers have 20 students at least per class.
Right.
So you're talking about people who would love to be there for every child, but the weight alone of how many kids they're responsible for sometimes makes it difficult to reach out. And that's what I mean. I don't mean on any level that people aren't committed.
You know, in the younger years when your kid has one teacher for 6 hours, you see a range of things, but if you're only seeing that tiny little piece, the teacher may not have the information to put together that.
And one of the things that's really helpful too, and this goes back to the connection with your kids, is your kids will tell you what teachers, what coaches, what staff are really well connected with the other students. Build a bridge with that teacher or staff member.
And that's also what you learn from the friends sometimes if you don't learn it from your own kid.
Very true. But you have to listen. You have to be asking questions and you have to be listening. And those things still require us engaging in this process. We have to consistently engage. There's no period of time that we get to unplug. But yes, there's always that coach. There's always that teacher who knows everything that's going on. There's always that counselor that is connected well with the kids, whether it's the Gear Up in the city of Hampton. We have our
Yeah,
Gear Up counselors.
that's been fabulous.
They are fantastic. And they have real relationships with the kids because they get to deal with smaller groups of them for longer periods of time. So the Dean of Students is also fantastic as an asset because they know what kids are getting in trouble, what are not, whether or not your kid has been to class on time or has been hanging out in the hallways, what's going on when they're hanging out. You need to make those relationships, build those bridges, because at the high school level, those bridges are crucial to your kids' success. And we want to make sure that your kids are safe. And unfortunately, when they start to get older, when we mention the violent issues, that's when things start to happen where people are willing to start using guns and, God forbid, knives in there. We're in fist fights now, and we're talking about doing dangerous things while driving, because you brought up the fact that our kids are now driving. I mean, there are just a series of ways that they can get into some very dangerous situations that we need to make sure that we are as plugged in as we possibly can be from all the way through into their adulthood.
And while, I may initially stereotype and say boys do more of the physical violence, I think high school girls have gotten to a point where they become violent or solve things. There's, fights and hair pulling and, hold my earrings is kind of a thing. I mean, it isn't just the boys.
It is not just the boys at all. The boys are more likely to have high volatile experiences and retaliations for other things. So there are some patterns that we see where the boys are concerned. But where the girls are concerned, you're right that it is now starting to get physical. It has been for a little while now. Unfortunately, our television, as much as it's wonderful, because you and I are both on it, it works in the opposite sometimes as well, because some of the reality television shows are highlighting and giving attention to really bad behavior when it comes to teenagers. And when we're not paying attention to what our teenagers are exposed to and how they're processing that, some of them see it as the opportunity for their 15 minutes of fame. This is my chance to be noticed. Nobody wants to be invisible. And at that teenage period, everybody wants to know that they exist. And unfortunately, they will use negative things in order to finally be seen. We need to give them positive ways to be seen. And we need to make sure that they understand when there is negativity going on, that those are not our values, nor are those the expectations for how we want our children to behave. But if we're not having that dialogue, we're not even aware of how they're processing the information that they're being exposed to.
Right.
So that's where the conversations become essential. And the bringing the kids to your home, I mean, my house is Grand Central Station. I mean, quite literally, because I wanted it to be very clear that this is the space that you are all welcome. And whether or not I like each of the kids, because I don't like everybody, I treat everybody well, because that's our job as parents, and I make sure that I'm listening to what everybody has to say. And then after they leave, that's when you have the conversations with your kids about the fact that I heard what so-and-so said. And believe me, I do not ever expect to hear you communicate that way, treat people that way, whatever it may be, but you won't even know that you need to do those things if you are not creating the atmosphere to be aware.
Well, also, let's talk about, because there have been some national cases that have made the news, a dating form of bullying where maybe girls act like they're interested in a guy and they videotape and there's some exploitation there, or the other way around. Maybe the popular guy finds a less popular girl, or there's manipulation and just a bad situation. And partly it's done, I mean, it's probably always been done. You maybe nominate somebody for Homecoming Queen as a joke or whatever. But now I think it's exemplified because you can do it on social media, and it is that fame. It's like, I, as the bully, want people to see this. Ha ha ha.
I have power. And when we're looking for power in nefarious ways, ugly things happen. And you're right, the advent of social media has changed the landscape, because it's not something like where years ago somebody might take a picture that's inappropriate and post it somewhere. Well, once you get the picture down, it's done. But now, these things exist forever.
Oh, they've been texted to a million people. You can't capture them back.
It's really difficult, and that's why it's very important that we're paying attention to what's going on. And yes, there are different kinds of dynamics and manipulations that take place. place. But we have to make sure that we are standing guard where those things are concerned. We're paying attention to what's happening, and we're listening and asking lots of questions. But it is important, very important, that we are gaining access to as many things as we possibly can where our kids are concerned. Getting plugged in is everything, particularly when they're in high school.
Mm-hmm. I will say I still have a MySpace account because when that was the thing, when my older son, was young, you have to be there. You have to be where they are.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I mentioned it when we did our middle school segment, the importance of recognizing that everything under your household is your responsibility. It's so true.
It's your phone, it's your computer.
You pay for it. And even if they pay for it, they don't pay rent in your house. So you're still able to do certain kinds of things. So it's just important that we are very, very consistent about making sure that we are aware of what's going on and don't unplug just because your kids are older.
Right. Okay. So to recap, if you were just to have a 15-second thing here, what would you tell parents of teens?
I would tell you, plug in as much as you possibly can. Make sure you understand what's going on socially for your kids. Do not ignore social media. It's very, very important. Make sure you partner with your schools. Find out who are the teachers, the staff members who are in the know, and build relationships with them. And then finally, create the environment so the teens feel welcome in your home, because it is an asset to knowing what's going on with your kids. Simultaneously, it is very, very good for your kids because they are that family, that household where everybody is welcome.
Yeah.
It's good for them socially.
And I found that so many of those kids need an adult too.
Absolutely.
And if I can be that adult, it helps them. There is, not a child out there who comes from a perfect family, no matter how hard we try.
Absolutely. And there's no kid who wants less love. None.
Oh, that's right.
No kid wants less love, no matter what environment they're coming from. And if you can create an environment where they feel loved and supported, you become an asset as well. And that asset means that you can influence things in a positive way and never waste those opportunities.
Thank you. That's very inspirational.
Absolutely.
That's going to stick with me. Thanks, Albion. I appreciate that.
Thanks, Robin.
And thank you for listening. I hope you are maybe more aware of the types of bullying out there. And remember to stay plugged in with your teen, no matter how much he or she acts like he doesn't want you to. Thanks for watching.